Let's explore the dynamics of South Africa's power issues and possible solutions. With us is Eddie O'Connor, Chief Executive of Mainstream Renewable Power, and Peter Harrington still stays with us. Good morning to you, Eddie. Lovely to have you. You have an incredibly impressive CV. Just to highlight a few points, you were said to be behind one of the driving forces behind Europe's offshore supergrid. Also, you helped build Ireland's first commercial wind farm. Now, given the fact that we are looking at an energy mix, we did hear from Brian Molefe yesterday saying that nuclear needs to be an important part. What you've been able to do in Europe, do you think this is something that we could replicate here in South Africa?
With wind energy, absolutely, certainly. You've got the two great resources here in South Africa. You've got solar and you've got wind, and you've got such an abundance. It's very unusual that any one country would be so blessed.
Eddie, I quickly want to ask you a question. I've read a couple of articles that state that the South African government and private sector have done exceptionally well in harnessing and getting that up and running. Where do you see we can improve, and what sectors should we take more cue from what you started?
Well, I think the South African government has done a great job. It's very transparent. It's a real success story for this country, not just in Africa, but in world terms. You've taken the price down here to something like between 1/3 and 1/2 of the price of coal. And South Africa is one of the cheapest coal countries in the world. So that's a great testament to success. If I was to advise the government and say if there's anything further that we could do, I would say commit to a long-term programme. Now, I heard the minister speak last night, and she talked about there being 9,000 megawatts of wind over the long term. Well, actually, we can do a lot better than that here. And I would also start looking at storage. There's this great South African, Elon Musk, and he's building a battery factory in Nevada, and the price of storage of electricity is coming down. So we're able to deal with the one remaining technical issue with wind and with solar, which is the fact that it's variable in output. Obviously, stuff coming from the sun only is available during the daytime, and the wind blows mainly during the day as well, but also at night, but it's not entirely predictable. So if we were to ally storage with that, well, then we'd have baseload power from wind and from solar. And I believe that's the way that South Africa will be in 2050. I believe we will go for cheap, free power here in South Africa. The success so far tells me that this is a very intelligent, a very far-sighted government, and it's just those two things that I would like to see, if you like, added to the mix: a long-term commitment so we can build an industry here in South Africa, and a commitment to storage as well, to start deploying storage both at the wind farms and in houses.
Eddie, can you help us separate fact from fiction? Of course, climate change groups are closely watching developments in the renewable energy space. Are wind farms or windmills, are they responsible for or changing the ecosystem in a negative way? Can you just tell us a bit about that?
Well, everything that you put into the environment changes it slightly. But the whole point of doing an environmental impact assessment is that you identify what the impacts are going to be before you build a wind farm. Now, what impacts are there? Well, if you don't build it on where the birds are flying, on a bird migration route, well, then you're not going to kill any birds. They're visible. Wind turbines are definitely visible, so you're going to see them. But here in South Africa, up in the Karoo and in several other areas all along the coast, there are no people to be even looking at them. So I think the impacts are, for instance, very minimal compared, let's say, with the coal-fired power station or with the nuclear power station. Wind has a very benign and very minor impact on the environment. With solar, there's practically no impact at all because there are no moving parts. It hugs the countryside. It's like a giant Lego set spread out across the area, and it just captures radiation from the sun and turns it directly into electricity. So the impacts from solar are as close to zero as you can get. Maybe there might be some ground animals whose habitat might be disturbed, but again, the environmental impact assessment that you carry out before you build a solar plant will identify those impacts and mitigate them then.
Okay.
Sorry, Adi, I want to quickly ask you, obviously we've seen a lot of footage of all these solar farms in the Karoo and what a success story that has been. Wind farm, we've seen them pop up in selected areas, but obviously we've got a windy city in Port Elizabeth and opportunities there. Do you see the municipal government getting involved in driving those developments?
I'm glad you asked that question. It's a great question. Here's the answer. Yes, municipal governments really have to become involved here. There's a shortage of power at the municipal level. There's, for instance, in Nelson Mandela Bay, Port Elizabeth, there's a lot of wind in the hinterland there, and if the local government there were able to tap into that wind,